you graduated with APW, coming with that gauntlet match, like what was that feeling like? Getting that certificate, it's like, hey, I am now a professional wrestler.
I was almost too tired to really register like what I had accomplished. I was just like, oh my God, it's over. Where's my water? And I think when I finally had a chance to like cool down and the adrenaline died, I was like, oh my God, like I graduated, I got through it. I am a professional wrestler now, according to AEPW. So when I was done being tired, that's when I was like, oh, heck yeah. Like, this is such a wonderful moment. And it really was surreal, right? That's like a whole year's worth of effort to get to that point. I had seen so many people do that graduation gauntlet before me, and then having that moment to myself was really special.
On this episode of the PGTK podcast, we have Connor Chen as our guest on this episode. How are you?
I'm doing very well. Thank you for having me. Super excited to be here. I've been looking forward to this for a while now, so I'm just glad to be here.
It just took 31 episodes, but you're not. I tease. So you recently graduated at UT, and what did you major in?
So you're right. I graduated from UT, and I was in mechanical engineering.
Okay, and being a professional wrestler and doing a lot of your studies during that time, how did you manage to find that balance on doing the thing that you love versus the thing that you're studying within mechanical engineering?
Well, it was very challenging because, as you might guess, the mechanical engineering workload was very heavy, very intense. And so at first it was definitely a struggle when I first started, right? Trying to balance that, something that I really enjoy doing versus something that I sort of had to do. And so finding that balance was tough because at first I really wanted to just be immersed in the wrestling. But, you know, I had to give something to the school and to my classes and to my major. So eventually, over time, I learned how to better organize that stuff. And so it became a matter of scheduling, knowing what my deadlines were for school, and then planning my wrestling around those deadlines so that I could do both without necessarily sacrificing one or the other, which was challenging. It was definitely challenging. And there were a lot of days where I would be exhausted and tired, because both mentally and physically, but you know, it's what I had to do at the time. So I made it work to do the thing that I had to do and the thing that I wanted to do.
Yeah. And of course you graduated with APW coming with that gauntlet match. And I did witness a couple of the graduates a few weeks ago. When you graduated that gauntlet match after all the time that you've done at APW, like what was that feeling like? Getting that certificate, it's like, hey, I am now a professional wrestler.
It was, oh man, I was super nervous leading up to it, right? Like, I don't know how to prepare other than just to go to training and like maybe do a little cardio. So it was a huge moment that I was just very nervous for. And in fact, I actually, it's an hour long, or it's supposed to be around that time, or pretty long. And I did not eat leading up to it for some reason. And so 10 minutes before the gauntlet, I went to Ollie Summers. I was like, I didn't eat anything. And he was like, oh, buddy, come on, man. You got to. So he went to the store. He bought me some stuff. And so I literally went into my gauntlet fueled by a bag of Lay's and a Snickers bar.
Wow. That's like, you're on fumes at that point.
I was on fumes. It was like going through it. You start off strong, and I thought, oh, I can keep going this strong, but it's very, as you might guess, intense, it's tiring, and it's hard hitting. Some people, they see it as a test, and they want to test you, and so they go maybe they put a little more extra into their hits or their chops or whatever, right? The whole purpose is trying to tucker you out. But when you get over that hurdle, when you get over that mountain, man, I was fucking exhausted. Sorry, I don't know if I can cuss, but I was. No,
you're good. You're good.
I was exhausted, and I was almost too tired to really register like what I had accomplished. I was just like, "Oh my God, it's over! Oh my God, where's my water?" And then I think when I finally had a chance to like cool down and the adrenaline died, I was like, "Oh my God, like I graduated, I got through it. I am a professional wrestler now, according to AEPW." So when I was done being tired, that's when I was like, oh, heck yeah. Like, this is such a wonderful moment. And it really was surreal, right? That's like a whole year's worth of effort to get to that point. I had seen so many people do that graduation gauntlet for me, and then having that moment to myself was really special. So super happy that I succeeded, and super happy that I got to do it at AAPW.
And now this year, to walk across the stage at UT with your degree, and I'm not gonna. Well, let's compare that with AAPW and with UT. How did that stack up? Having your mechanical engineering degree and your pro wrestling certificate over at AAPW.
That's so funny. I like the way it's tied in, but it almost like completely different worlds, right? Completely different worlds. When I graduated from UT, of course, we walked across, we got the diploma. I had my whole family there. That was a really special moment for me too, right? 5 years, because I was delayed a year, but 5 years of like hard work, effort, and also like not like just struggle, right? Just struggle, internal conflict, not really knowing if I was on the right path, if what I was doing was the right thing, but sticking to it and then getting through it and succeeding. Culmination of all my hard work when I got that diploma. It really was a big special moment, as it should be. And then having my family there, of course, was also great, was also wonderful. And give me a moment. Just both those moments were they represent like the culminations of my efforts in the fields, right? They both were. And with the engineering, I had my family, but with APW, I had the people that I trained with, the people who trained me, the people who helped me get into this business, right? Those moments were so special because not only did they represent the culmination of my effort, but I was surrounded by the people that got me to that. You know what I mean? So both those moments were super special, and really significant moments. I'm really glad that I am fortunate enough to have people to be there for those moments.
And there's two different sides of who you are, and we kind of talked about like the thing that you love versus the thing that that you're part of in mechanical engineering, and to have both those, and it shapes you who you are as a person down the line.
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny because I'm currently looking for a job now that I graduated. Something that I occasionally use to try and make myself more appealing to employers is like, by the way, I did pro wrestling. You know what that's good for? That's good. There's a lot of good things for the pro wrestling. And so it is funny. It has made me quite the unique individual with like a widespread of like perspectives and experiences.
Yeah. And going back to what you're doing in wrestling, where did ETC come from?
Okay. ETC, when you start off at AAPW, a lot of what your gimmick is almost decided by Pops, or at the very least is suggested by Pops, right? Pops will give you an idea. And I will say for the most part, his ideas are really great for getting you off the ground, right? They teach you how to be a character. They teach you how to be a personality, right? And so ETC, the idea from the very start was the college kid, because that's what I literally was. I was the kid in college.
Right.
So ETC also is etc. And Pops thought it'd be funny if my initials were like some sort of smart acronym, like etc. And then he was like, let's do ETC, and we want to do the smartest sounding names ever. So it was like Edmund Thornton Chen. And I fought very hard for the Chen, because he actually has this thing, or he used to, where he doesn't like it when you use your real name, like any part of your real name. But I fought really hard for the Chen because my Instagram handle is the Chen Lock. And I did not.
Okay.
I did not want to change it. So I said Edmund. I think he said Thornton. And then I got to keep the Chen. And so ETC came about from just this like kind of funny little like name, right? This acronym pun. Like he was the college kid who thought he was smarter than everyone because he went to college, and some reason that translates into wrestling and it makes him a better wrestler for God knows why. But UTC certainly thought it did.
Yeah, because I think I got this from I think Air got it, but I'll fact check myself on that. You had one of your matches, you were in a cap and gown. Is that correct?
Oh, it wasn't just one match, dude. For a while, that was just my entrance gear.
Where did that come from?
It was literally my high school graduation cap and gown, like a World Tour cap and gown. I asked, I think my debut. I asked my parents because my parents showed up, right? My family showed up. I was like, "Hey, do you think you could find my high school cap and gown? I knew they kept it. Do you think you could find it and bring it down for me? I want to wear it for the wrestling." And so, first ever match, I came out with cap down. And then later for Christmas, my aunt actually got me like a really nice stole. And so it said honors on it. And so I added the stole to my entrance gear, and I was like, hell yeah. I was so happy about it.
No, especially, how did that change? Did the cap and gown ever go away? And when was that match, if you remember, not wearing?
Yeah, the cap and gown did go away after a while, and so did the stole. But actually, the cap and gown went first, and then I would just come out with the stole over my naked chest, and then sorry for describing it that way, but that is what I did. And then I come out with the stole, and then maybe a text. That's another thing I had. I came out with a textbook that I would occasionally hit people with, and the final match that I wore the stole for was my match against Houston Hendricks in the 30-minute Ironman for the AAPW Wrestling Championship. And after I won the match, like the very next show, I had my first title defense, and I had brought this jacket that I really liked, and I was trying to fit the stole over it or on top of it somehow. And I was just like, what do you, like, Zeke Rose was in the room with me, and I was like, what do you think? And he kind of looked at me, and he's like, I don't think you need the stole anymore. And so that Houston match was the final match I wore the stole. And then the very next match I had, I only came out with like the jacket or different types of jackets at that point. Like now I wear my my fraternity line jacket from when I was in a fraternity in college, and so now I wear the line jacket that I got from my fraternity as my entrance gear.
It's interesting, like how the college foundation kind of carried over through your career. And what were some of those lessons from that debut, and what have you learned? Whether it's something that you need to improve, or like, I can do better on that area when I wrestle.
Are you talking about specifically from my debut or in general? Because in general, there's so many things I can do better, and there's so many lessons I can learn. But if you're talking about my debut in particular, I had my debut against Houston Hendricks. And man, that was such a long time ago. It's crazy. It's funny because, like, when I first started out, I would go back and I'd watch that match and I think, this is pretty good. Like, I don't have many complaints. I haven't gone back and watched it yet, but I guarantee if I went back and I watched it, I'd be like, oh my God.
What am I doing?
Oh my God. Because, like, you can watch me and you can tell, like, I'm like, you can see me literally like pause thinking, what do I do now? And then I act, right? One of the biggest lessons I learned from that match and in general matches in the future is that when you're wrestling, right, you're trying to sell an idea. And that idea you're trying to sell is that this is all real, right? If I'm in a fight with someone, not that I've been in a real fight, but theoretically, if I was in a fight with someone, I wouldn't wait and then go. I would just immediately get on top of them and try to constantly keep the offense going, right? So one thing I got better at and improved that was being more natural with my heat or with my movements in general. So it doesn't just look like, what do I do? Oh, nah, I'll do that, right? It's improv, right? You got to be good at improv. And that's something that you definitely get better at the more matches you have and the more experience you have.
It's interesting. I see like a lot of matches, not just like in AEP, I see a lot of promotions where some wrestlers just have like a deer in the headlights going. I'm like, okay, it's almost like, is he somewhere in this space? And it's like, okay, all right, he'll do better next time. And it's one of those things where it takes a lot of time to really hone that. And one thing you brought up selling at one point. One thing I know is in a lot of your matches, you sell so tremendously. And how has selling been such an important aspect when you wrestle? And it can be wrestles in general, but for you at least, like, how has selling been such an important aspect when you do wrestle?
I'm glad you like my selling. That's
I heard Owlie, and I'm like, all right, that is a fun tag for the question.
I didn't even know that was something that people thought I was good at, or that's something that people noticed. But I think that specific, because I think what you're referring to is the owie, right?
Yes.
Taking a blow, going owie.
Yeah.
That's I would say that's less selling and more like being audible, like talking
Right.
and then bring those those emotes, right? Because for me, the wrestling is more than just the moves, right? It's more than just the sequences. It's about being theatrical. It's about being entertaining, right? You can have all these cool moves and stuff like that, but I've been to a lot of shows where the crowd isn't really into it because they don't have a reason to get into the characters. So I find that the best way to get people into the characters is to be audible, is to be entertaining, is to be like to make noise, right? And so that's where the owie comes from. Because what a funny sell, you made a funny noise. And so I'll say stupid stuff during the match, right? Dill Dempsey, the last time I saw him, he was talking about how when we wrestled, he went behind me and I went, "Hey, what are you doing back there?" And it cracked him up in the middle of the match. And I was like, that's just me trying to be entertaining for the crowd, right? Beyond just the athletics. In terms of selling, that's something I actually feel like I need to work on still because
Okay.
as I've been working babyface recently, and I'm not usually the one who does the selling, I'm usually the heel, but especially since I've been working face recently, like selling is really about just gaining sympathy from the crowd, right? So you show the pain on your face, you let it sink in. One of my biggest weaknesses is I move too quickly, I move too frantically, and I don't really let those moments breathe. So I'm glad that at the very least audibly, it's great and it works out. But with regards to selling specifically, I feel like there's a lot for me to work on still. And I guess it's another thing that you mentioned earlier is like, what are some things you want to improve on in the future?
Yeah. And of course, like a lot of the wrestlers, whether it's an APW or some other wrestling academy, you do go past the four walls of the school. Do you remember the other wrestler? Do you remember your first wrestling promotion that approached you to work with them?
I do. And it's a really, it's kind of funny story, but in the moment it was very sad. But the first promotion that ever asked me to be on their show was Baracho.
Oh.
Yeah. So this was literally around when Baracho, literally their first show ever. And they wanted me to be in their battle royal something, right? And I was like, yes, absolutely. I'd love to be there. The night before the show, they ran on Sunday, APW runs on Saturday. So I worked APW and I took a bad suplex and I hurt my knee to the point where the next day I couldn't walk.
Oh.
And and I was so frustrated. I was upset and I was nervous because I was like, oh my God, I'm literally canceling on these guys the day of the show. How do I approach this? And I contacted Ollie Summers at the time. And I was like, hey, man, I have to cancel. What do I say to them? What do I do? And he just told me, hey, be honest. You can't help it. This is out of your control. So just be honest and they'll understand. And so I told them, I had to tell them, I had to be like, hey, I hurt my knee. And of course they were disappointed, but they probably appreciated that over me going out there and just bombing myself in the middle of the ring or something like that. That was the first show that approached me, but it's not the first outside show that I actually worked.
Okay. And coming in from one style of wrestling to another, Because I do remember, were you in the tag gauntlet as well at Apocalypto?
I was, yes, I was. I
Okay,
was.
okay. Just wanted to make sure because coming in from one style of wrestling with APW and coming into this case with Baracho, what were some of the nuances that you've observed coming into another promotion?
Uh, I think probably the main difference is just how the people at the top run the company, right?
Right.
I would say Pops is very hands off usually with the matches. If he wants a specific finish, he'll let you know, but he's not there really like dictating specific moments or anything like that, right?
Okay.
He kind of leaves it to the wrestlers. Baracho, Baracho kind of has like they want to tell more of a story, and there's a specific story they want to tell, or there's a specific moment that they want to hit, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but it's something we have to consider when we're calling the match and when we're working
Okay.
on that, right? So I would say any promotion, right? The style that you work, it just depends on who's in charge of the company, right?
Okay.
Who's running it, because different promoters will have different management styles, right? Or different like they have a different way of like how they want the talent to work the match.
Right.
So it is an adjustment sometimes, like working at AEPW and calling a match for AEPW is very, very different from calling a match with Inspire, right? Or Barrage Show. So that's kind of something that as a worker, you kind of learn and you adapt to.
And then wrestling is still a universal language, right? I think with these different promotions, and it's it's like a stripes and a zebra, where it's unique, but
Yeah.
it's still wrestling at the end of the day. And I want to bring this up too. Throughout your wrestling journey, what would you consider your favorite match of all time?
I think my favorite match of all time, I mentioned it earlier, was my the Iron Man match I had with Houston Hendricks. It was a 30-minute Iron Man match at one of the AEPW Summer Spectaculars for the AEPW Wrestling Championship. Yeah, it was just like a match where Houston and I have always had really good chemistry. He was my debut match. He was my second match. He was my first feud. We've always had really good chemistry. And so it was also another special moment where not only did the match go super well and everyone watching it seemed to like it, but I had my family in the crowd because I had told them, hey, the title, like I might win the title. I had a lot of my family there watching. And when I did win that match and when I had that belt and the crowd like erupted, even though I was the bad guy, the crowd erupted. And it was such a special moment because it made me feel like I had achieved something, right? I had achieved something, and I had proven to this huge crowd, to these promoters who had been watching, and to these veterans in the back that, hey, I'm pretty good at this sometimes. So it made me feel like it was a really nice achievement. It was also my first title ever, so that was very nice as well.
Your family has been very supportive too in your wrestling journey. How has that? Did it take time for them to warm up to what you really love to do in wrestling?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, and joining the wrestling was like the first decision I made without consulting them. I did not consult. I did not tell them about it until after I had made the decision and after I signed the papers with Pops. And they were, of course, not happy. They were not excited because, of course, no one wants to see their son, or very few people want to see their son do that because, they'll break their neck or then they'll die, right? So my mom in particular, she had a really hard time coming to terms with it in the first few months, even after I debuted. We would have conversations sometimes where she would just be like, I don't understand why you're doing this. I don't get it. Like, why does it have to be this? Right. And I think what eventually sort of won her over is the fact that I was clearly enjoying. I was clearly on with it. it was something in my life that I was doing out of my own complete volition without any outside influences, and I was clearly enjoying it, and it made me happy. At this point in time, I didn't really have that one hobby that made me happy, or that really consumed me the way that for my brother it was like show choir and singing and theatrics, right? I didn't have that until wrestling. And then when she saw how happy it made me, I think she warmed up, and then she became like super supportive of it. She became very supportive.
She must have been ecstatic when you heard and knew. She must have been ecstatic.
It was. She made me a sign.
Oh, it said
sign. And if you look at some of my posts, BTC for president, she actually I stopped by the entryway, I held up the belt, and she stood next to me and she held up the sign. And so she was ecstatic. So my parents have always been like my biggest supporter. I love my parents. And the thing is that even if they didn't like the wrestling, even if they didn't support it, I would not have held it against them, because I understood how scary it must have been for them to see their son do these things and like put his body at risk. But I think when they realized how much I was enjoying it, and again, that I was somewhat good at it, they were a lot more on board with it.
And of course, like with this year, we're past the halfway point. Whether it's in your career in mechanical engineering or pro wrestling, what are your goals? What are your goals coming to mind in your journey?
It is interesting because when I joined the wrestling, I didn't necessarily know how long I was going to stick with it, right? For me, I was joining just to try it out. It was like a bucket. Oh, I'll do one match in the right. And then over time, I got more and more engrossed with it, but I still never really had that. I'm going to be honest, I don't really have that same goal to get to the very top, right? My goal with wrestling is to just have fun with it and to enjoy it, right? Whether that means I get to WWE or AEW, or whether that means I stay at a local level or somewhere in between, as long as I'm having fun, as long as I'm enjoying what I do in the ring and then everything around the ring, that would make me perfectly happy. That would make me perfectly happy to just have that something that I just enjoy and have fun with.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like, if you love something, like you'll never. That's that old saying of like, if you love something, you'll never work a day in your life because it's something that you pursue, and it's one of those things that it takes time to find that passion. And of course, you have that certificate that says you're a pro wrestler. That's kind of like the milestone that you get, going into the business. And it's interesting how watching a lot of your matches and having the side conversations that we have, it's nice to know that, like wrestling is still in you, it's still part of who you are as a person.
Well, I'm very glad that you feel that way. And absolutely, like even if it sometimes even if I feel that sometimes I feel it wane or I feel it go, at the end of the day, when I get in that ring and I stand across the opponent and we start working, I always enjoy it. I always have fun doing it. So absolutely, I agree with you.
Yeah, awesome. So we're close to wrapping up, and I always end my conversations with guests like this. So the World Health Organization listed adolescents between the ages of 10 and 19. Now, between those age ranges, people do tend to pick things up along the way. Now, picture this. You were in the same room as young Connor Chen. Now, I usually give the ages, but you have the number in mind at the age of blank. What would you like to talk to him about?
I think for me, wrestling was a big lesson in like independence and learning how to make decisions on my own and sort of be my own person without constantly worrying about what other people's input would be. And I do think younger me was, and even maybe to an extent, modern day me, I think younger me is someone who was always very concerned with how other people perceive him or other people would perceive his actions. And so general advice I go back, I give is like, hey, if you like something, if you want to do something, you shouldn't be so concerned about other people's opinion that you prevent yourself from doing the things that you could potentially love.
Right.
So that would be my advice for past me who was very like apprehensive about that stuff. But for like maybe me when I started wrestling, oh man, I don't know. I had such a I'm sure there's advice I could give, but I honestly like the journey I've had has been so fulfilling and so wonderful. I'm glad I met the people I've met. I'm glad that I went to AAPW. I suppose if I had any advice, it would have been maybe something along the lines of don't be so hard on yourself, right? Even in failure, there is something to learn, and you shouldn't be afraid to fail. So just go out there, and if you have to fail 100 times to become a better wrestler, then fail 100 times, fail more. So don't be afraid to fail. Don't be afraid to test yourself, I think is what my advice would be.
Yeah, and all it takes is one. Seriously, like out of that 100 times, it's just one. Because like oftentimes, like people will have many attempts, but that one moment, that one spark, and then all those 100 tries are just all worth it in the end.
Absolutely. You are the sum of the lessons you've learned. And I do feel like the wrestler I am today is the wrestler who has learned from all of my previous like mistakes and shortcomings.
Yeah, exactly. So, but otherwise, I have nothing left to give. Thank you, Connor, for having me on. This was fun. I love how deep the conversation got. And oftentimes, like, I love these conversations because I'm listening a lot to who you are as a person. And I really appreciate you, like, just seeing your matches to having, like I mentioned before, like our little side talks here and there. So hearing this side throughout this time on the podcast, it's been a treat to be quite honest.
Well, it's been a treat to be here. Thank you so much for having me. I loved answering your questions, and I'd love to do it again sometime.
Yeah, for sure. And you have before. Where can we find you if you have anything upcoming down the line? If you have any wrestling events or anything like that, take it away.
My wrestling Instagram is at the Chenlock. That is TheChenLock. There are no spaces. It is cut off my name. Find the Chenlock. It's been the same way since I started.
Okay, awesome. So let me end the recording.